Last night, after our backstage episode wrapped, which, by the way, you should go to dailywire.com or YouTube after you're done with this show to watch it, but only after you're done with this show, I logged onto Twitter to discover that I was trending nationwide. One thing I've learned over the years is that when I trend, it's never because everyone is happy about something I said. I've never trended because everyone is saying, wow, I agree with this point that Matt Walsh made. I'm not sure if anyone trends for that reason, but I certainly don't. For me, it's always because people are very mad, very upset, very outraged about some opinion or some other opinion that I expressed. And that was certainly the case here. In this situation, people on the internet were quite apoplectic about a tweet that I sent out in reaction to a new Gallup poll, which showed that the number of kids and young adults who identify as LGBT has risen in an extraordinary and sudden way over the last few years. This is what I wrote. I said, the number of kids who identify as LGBT, especially trans and bisexual, has absolutely skyrocketed. If you think this is a natural or organic development, you're deluded. The media, Hollywood, and the school system actively recruit children into the LGBT ranks. I followed that up with this. I said, the number of supposedly trans children and young adults is 10 times higher than the number among older generations. Do you think that's because a lot more people are born in the wrong body these days? Whatever the hell that means? No, this is social engineering. In our culture, the LGBT lobby poses the greatest threat to our children, especially the T part. So there it is. The opinion that I have been, that's the opinion that I've been reliably informed by thousands of people is detestable, outrageous, hateful, bigoted, and so on. And much of the reaction was exceedingly unhinged, but none more so than the response from Parker Malloy over at Media Matters, who sent out a frantic string of tweets implying that I'm a pedophile for these opinions. On what basis were these accusations made? Well, no basis, of course. It's just that Parker Malloy disagrees with me, thus feels entitled to make up literally any lie at all in retribution. Those tweets have all now been deleted, by the way. This is what we're dealing with from the opposition. People scummy enough to defame and slander their ideological opponents, but too cowardly to stand by the defamation. Most of the rest of the tweets and messages I've received have been more along the lines of, calling me a piece of garbage, an idiot, a worthless sack of such and such, I should kill myself, etc., and so forth. So, first of all, after receiving all of this feedback and seeing that my words were so deeply hurtful to so many people, I want to say with all sincerity that I am not sorry at all, not even a little bit. I couldn't be less sorry for what I said. I'm 100% right. Everything I said was absolutely and totally correct, and I'm so happy that I said it. I am not and could never be sorry for being right. I will, however, happily accept the apologies of any of my critics, should they decide to offer them. I'm all ears for that. I am a gracious and forgiving man in that way. But as for being sorry myself, not a chance. Not ever. Not ever. I am, though, happy to explain why I'm right about what I said. This is an important issue. By far, one of the most important issues that our culture faces in the present moment. It's worth talking about in greater detail. So, first, let's go back and look at the numbers, okay? According to Gallup, the overall number of Americans who identify as LGBT is up to 5.6%. That's a 1% increase from the last tally in 2017. That's a significant jump in just 3 or 4 years. But the truly seismic shifts can be seen among the youngest generations. Among Gen Z, and Gallup defines that as those born between 1997 and 2002. So this doesn't even take into account the very youngest generations, where we can assume the figures are even more dramatic. But among Gen Z, a full 16%, 15.9 to be exact, identify as LGBT. Another 5% have apparently no opinion about their own sexual orientation. Breaking down the numbers further, 2.1% of Gen Zers say they're gay, 1.4% say lesbian. Both of these figures represent at least a doubling over Gen X and older generations. And then another 11.5% say they're bisexual. The number of trans people in Gen Z is almost 2%, 1.8% right now. Now, that might seem like a small portion, but keep in mind that 1.8% is nearly 10 times higher, as I said in the tweet, nearly 10 times higher than the portion among Gen X and older generations. And keep in mind again, also, that this does not take into account those who are born after 2002. And it's the after 2002 generation, those who were born while I was in high school, who've really been hit the hardest by LGBT indoctrination. Yes, LGBT indoctrination. That is what's happening here, and I cannot take seriously anyone who would deny it. The drag queen story hours, the trans books for kids, the gender theory propaganda shoved into kids' minds at the youngest ages, the constant promotion of LGBT lifestyles and identities by school, Hollywood, the media, and so on. All of this has two clear and purposeful effects. Number one, it makes it seem trendy and cool to be LGBT. We've gone way beyond mere acceptance or toleration. We have long since gone way beyond those things. It is now, for many young people, seen as more interesting, more fashionable to be able to tack a few letters from the sacred initialism onto your name. You know, years of associating being cisgender and white with being privileged, and being privileged with being an oppressor and a bully, has an impact, it turns out. It's supposed to have an impact. It is designed to have the very impact that it's having. But if you point out that the strategies are working, you'll be called a bigot for noticing that there's a strategy at all. So that's the first thing. The second is that kids are being taught to view sex, gender, and sexual orientation a certain way. They're being indoctrinated into a view of sex and orientation that, when adopted by large numbers of people, will automatically and by design increase the LGBT ranks. For example, kids are being taught now that if you're a boy with feminine tendencies, then you might actually be a girl. If you're a girl with masculine tendencies, you might actually be a boy. Kids are taught that this is a possibility and encouraged to explore that possibility. Back when kids were not being taught this kind of anti-scientific nonsense, a girl with masculine tendencies was just a girl with masculine tendencies, a tomboy, we might have called her. Some girls were that way, and that was fine. Some boys were more feminine, and that was fine too. Now, we're ushering those types of girls and boys under the trans umbrella. What we're effectively saying is, you can't be that kind of girl or boy anymore. Those don't exist anymore, because if you're a feminine boy, then you're a girl. If you're a masculine girl, then you're a boy. Why do you think there are now more young people who call themselves trans than call themselves lesbian? And there are almost as many, and soon will be more, young people calling themselves trans than gay. Why is that? Because we've given young people this new framework for understanding themselves. The problem is that the framework is totally false, incoherent, and based in pseudoscience. So yes, in effect, these children are being recruited to be trans. They're being turned trans. Yes, that is what is happening. Kids are being turned trans. They are being made into something they are not. This is deliberate, it is diabolical, it is damaging and destroying many children. And I will not ever stop calling it what it is, no matter how loud the mob screams or what labels they throw at me. None of that matters to me. What matters is the truth, and this is it. Hey, listen, hit the subscribe button. Do it right now. I demand it, and I thank you for your compliance. It is somewhat appreciated.